Welcome back to the channel and the very hot southern Philippines. So today I'm going to be going over the entry requirements to the Philippines for foreigners coming in from abroad. We're going to cover whether you have to be vaccinated, unvaccinated, boosted, not boosted, what all of the requirements are as best that I can find. I'm going to be using primary sources from the Philippines government, and if I'm not using something that is official from the Philippines, such as newsletter or their primary sources, then I will tell you that it's anecdotal and it's just something that is being spread, or that certain individuals have been able to do it even if it goes against the guidance. So stay tuned. Let's go through it all right now. This video is going to cover a ton of information, so it's probably going to be a little long, but we're going to go through the process of what it is if you're coming in as a foreigner visa-free. I'm going to cover if you're married to a Filipino, if you're a former Filipino citizen, or if you're a former Filipino citizen, what you can do with your children coming in. I'm also going to cover the unvaccinated, whether you're boosted, whether you're not boosted. I'm going to talk about people who have been coming into the Philippines and what some things that have been happening to them, and just some really other final thoughts about what it would be like to be in the Philippines if you don't have the vaccine and what your choices are. This section is going to cover visa-free entry or visa-exempt entry into the Philippines. I think all but 2 countries get 30 days. There's a couple of them that get 59. The United States is one of the 30-day ones. So this covers if you're coming in on that, you get a stamp in your passport for 30 days, and these are the requirements currently in order to enter. First, you have to be fully vaccinated with one of the approved vaccines. You second have to show an acceptable proof that you have been vaccinated. Now, what they are determining to be acceptable proof includes an international certificate of vaccination from the World Health Organization, the VaxCert PH, that is the Philippines National Vaccine Certification, or a foreign certificate of vaccination from your own country. So if you're an American, this would be the handwritten CDC card or the digital one as well. I have used the handwritten one in this country as well as many other countries, have never had a problem with anybody using that. And then the final one is any other proof that is permitted by the IATF. And I have not seen a single reference anywhere of any other proofs that they have approved. So once you've got that, then it goes to what is your boosted status. So if you've been boosted at least once, only once is required, then you have no testing requirements to come prior to entering the Philippines, and you don't have any testing requirements once you get here unless they do a surprise inspection on you. If you have not been boosted but you do have full proof of vaccination, then you must either take an RT-PCR test within 48 hours before your departure, or a lab-taken rapid negative antigen test within 24 hours before your departure. Once you've got your boosted status taken care of, you also have to have a passport that still has at least 6 months of validity on it, and you have to have proof of a ticket for onward travel, and that ticket cannot be for more than 30 days if you're coming from a 30-day visa-exempt country. So you have to have either an onward ticket or a return ticket or a throwaway ticket that shows proof that you're going to be leaving within the period that your visa-free travel is permitted. And then finally, you have to have the One Health Pass QR code, which I'm going to go into later in the video and show you exactly how to do that. By the way, before we get into the content, if during this video you know something different or in addition to what I know, make sure you leave a comment below and tell me, or tell me what your experience was coming in, because it's not just informing me, which I love to hear, but it's also helping other people who discover this content. You know, at the end of the day, we should all be a community trying to help each other with entering these countries, coming to the Philippines, going to others, and the more information that you put in comments and people like myself share, the more information that's out there that shows us what's really happening in these countries. If you're coming as a family and you're a foreigner on one of these visa-free 30-day entries, then if you have children with you, then there are different rules for them. Basically, they have to have the One Health Pass, the passport just like you do, as well as proof of a ticket for onward travel. But if they are between the ages of 12 and 17, although they have to be fully vaccinated, they do not need a booster in order to come in and don't have to take a test with there. If the children are under 12, they don't have to be vaccinated at all as long as they're traveling with a parent who actually meets those requirements. So if you're a parent and you have those requirements met, then the child does not have to do anything quarantine or any other thing special. Balikbayans are former Filipino citizens who are now a citizen of a different country, or the spouses or children of current or former Filipino citizens. So there's some different requirements if you're coming in on one of these. They have to be coming with the former Filipino citizen or the current Filipino citizen in order for them to apply. But this visa allows anyone coming on it to stay for 1 year visa-free in the Philippines. It is absolutely free. There are no immigration fees. You essentially just ask for the stamp when you come in at immigration. Now, the entry requirements here is, again, they have to be fully vaccinated. They have to show that acceptable proof of vaccination that we talked about earlier. The same booster status applies. Still have to have a passport with 6 months of validity, but they do not need any sort of proof of an onward ticket. But there's a caveat here. Sometimes the airlines don't know that, or they don't understand it, and you have to make them look in their system to see that, yes, a Balikbayan is a valid visa that doesn't require that. If you're traveling with an airline such as Filipino Airlines, they already know this. I've never had a problem with them. Never even been asked for an onward ticket with Philippine Airlines, as long as they understood that we were coming as a Balikbayan. And then, of course, you do have to complete the One Healthcare Pass and get your QR code. In order to avail yourself of the Balikbayan visa, you have to, if you're married, bring your marriage certificate that is notarized, that shows you do have a legitimate marriage. If it's a child that's coming from a former Filipino or a current Filipino that doesn't have Filipino citizenship, you have to bring that child's birth certificate. And if you're a former Filipino, you can either bring your Filipino birth certificate or you can bring one of your old expired Filipino passports. Again, once you come in to immigration, you simply go through the Filipino line at immigration and you request the Balikbayan stamp at immigration, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. The One Health Pass is what you do online through the Filipino government site, and when you apply for it depends on what your status is. So if you're fully vaccinated and you have the booster, within 3 days before the time of your departure, you can apply for that. If you would try to apply for it online before that period of time, the site will not allow you to continue. Now, if you're fully vaccinated and you don't have a booster, then you do that after you receive your negative test result back, because you do have to upload that with your One Health Pass to show that you do have the test. So in order to get your One Health Pass, you go to onehealthpass.com.ph, which will bring up a website for the Bureau of Quarantine. Yes, the Philippines, for the love of God, has a Bureau of Quarantine now. And in there you go to register. When you get to the Bureau of Quarantine, it's going to have a picture. If you see the blue picture with the register on it, it's got the 1 on it. That's the one you'll click through that's going to take you to the application for the One Health Pass. All right, so on this, you have to go down and put your departure date when you're leaving the Philippines. And again, if you try to do it less than 3 days, it's going to come up and show that you cannot do that. So we'll do it for the 29th. We'll say that we're arriving at exactly the same time there. And then we'll get, for the port of entry, click airport, and then you have to select where you're coming in. And if you're coming in through Manila, that's going to be NAIA, Terminal 2 or 3, more than likely. We'll do Terminal 2, aircraft passenger. If you are a tourist, or you're an American, or you're British, you're going to be coming in as a foreign national. And then, have you been vaccinated? Unless you say yes, then they're probably not going to do that for you as a foreign national. I don't think it'll let you proceed. Here, you're probably going to be, if you're from the United States, you're going to be using your CDC, which is going to be National Vaccine Card, and then it will allow you to choose the countries that are actually eligible to use their national cards. So United States of America, and then you hit next. This brings up the next page. It's going to have a ton of personal information. I'm not going to fill all this out. I'm just going to point out a few things to you. So you'll put in all this information. Then you'll go down here. You have to either put a residence that you're going to stay at or a hotel. If it's a hotel, you put the information there. Then it will have your travel details. You'll need to put the country you're exiting. But what is really you have to put your purpose of visit too, which generally is going to be that you're going to be on a holiday, pleasure vacation, if you're doing a tourist, visiting family and friends. But you have to put all the countries that you have traveled to in the last 30 days here as part of that. And it can be checked with your passport on there. I haven't really heard of anybody getting denied on there. This form actually isn't checked by immigration, is my understanding. It's actually a separate department that we had it checked on when we came through. So you have to list all your exposure history, your clinical information, your comorbidities, and then after all of this and you put everything in, you will have to upload your test if you're not boosted at the end of this process. And then this will give you a QR code that you can have on your phone that you show them when you come into the Philippines. Unvaccinated. If you are unvaccinated under the national law of the Philippines, you are not a citizen, you legally cannot enter the Philippines. There is what I would call the Cebu exception. And basically the governor of Cebu declared that you did not have to be vaccinated in order to enter Cebu. There was some controversy on this. The courts and the other people have said that yes, this conflicts with national law, and the national law is superior over that of what the Cebu government has declared. However, that being said, there actually have been people who have been coming in through Cebu who were not vaccinated, and they've been coming in since February. A very few amount of people that I have seen some evidence of. When they do come in, they have to quarantine. They can't just show up and see if they have to quarantine. They actually had to plan this ahead of time, book their quarantine hotel, pay for all of that, and basically take the risk that they might not be able to go to the quarantine hotel, might get deported or turned away from the country, and all that money would have been wasted. Now, there's some other considerations if you're coming in and you actually are able to make it unvaccinated. And I do not suggest this at all. I absolutely don't. That is, once you get into the Philippines, a lot of times you're not going to be able to do internal travel within the Philippines on different types of transportation. Also, some services are just going to be denied to you. When I first got to the Philippines, they've in the province I'm in currently, it's kind of not as bad as it was or not being enforced, but they would check your vaccination status before you could even go into the mall. So if you can't go to the grocery store and you can't go to the mall and you don't have someone here that can, that's really going to hamper your ability to just survive in the Philippines. Another consideration is if you were actually able to get into the country unvaccinated, immigration could start being stricter on its enforcement at this at any time. I mean, it's totally at the discretion of the official to extend your visa once you've been there. There's already been some rumors about making stricter enforcement of extensions in the Philippines for folks, not really mentioning vaccination status. But if they started asking for that, then you could essentially be denied an extension and have to leave the country. Overall, I seriously, if it were me, would not even attempt to come in if I was unvaccinated. I just think it's really a foolish decision at this point, and you would be, in some cases, totally dependent upon others. You really couldn't come in solo and expect to just be safe. My final thoughts on all of this is that if you come into the Philippines, you should keep proof of your vaccination on your person at all times. A lot of times if you go to the store, depending on the province, depending on the city, depending on the store, depending on the guard actually, you could be asked to prove that you're vaccinated in order to get in. Same for transportation. Another thing is the rules here in the Philippines are changing all the time. So if you're watching this video right now before the beginning of September and it's in October already, probably you can throw half this stuff out the window and have to start from scratch to figure out all over again what the rules are, because they're changing all the time. They seem to be changing for Filipino citizens even faster than they're changing for foreigners that are coming in. And finally, you know, in my opinion, I love the Philippines. That's apparent to anybody who ever watches my videos. But as far as immigration and tourists coming into the country, they have really, since February, started lagging behind most of the rest of Southeast Asia and certainly the world. The world is trending more and more to opening up, not having to have any sort of jab or anything else to get into countries. And the Philippines has officially stated that they are going to start following the US's model or their guidance of the CDC, but they're going to do so at a much, much slower pace. And unfortunately, the slower that they go in following opening up, there's just other places that people can go. So unless they have a connection here through family or a spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, really, why come here and jump through all of those hoops when you can go somewhere else? That's just the way I see it. Until things start opening up, you know, unfortunately, the Philippines economy is what's going to suffer. I hope to see a change. Thailand, several months ago, I'd done a video on where if they didn't get, you know, their act together with all the other countries that were opening up, such as the Philippines were ahead of them at that time, then they were going to lose all the tourists. And then Thailand basically flung the doors wide open, let everybody in, and they are now reaping the rewards of that compared to a place like the Philippines or some other places in Southeast Asia. So those are your choices as we sit here today in August the 27th of 2022. This information will be virtually worthless in a month from now, so you'll need to check and make sure what the status is. Hopefully a lot of things have changed. I personally hope that they get rid of all of the requirements and go back to where we were back in, say, January of 2020. But I honestly don't foresee that happening very soon. I will be pleasantly surprised if they do. Again, if you like this content, subscribe so you can find it more in the future, and also hit a like if you found it informative and think it might help other people who are thinking of coming to the Philippines or are just curious about how you can get in right now.